Okami is, without a doubt, my favorite game ever. And after replaying it for the 5th time in its entirety on stream with y'all in a total of 18 2-ish hour streams each, I felt like it was time to compile all my thoughts about this game, taking you on a journey with my experience with this game throughout my life, breaking down every piece of the game itself, the different arcs and plot beats, the characters, the gameplay, and ultimately discuss why this is my favorite game in the entire world. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you a tale about a 10-year-old kid just getting into gaming on their own and their dad picking up a random game from a blockbuster that would unknowingly change their life. My first experience with Okami is honestly super nostalgic and near and dear to my heart, as it stems from a part in my childhood where I was just getting into video games properly myself. For context, I have always been a gamer. I got my first Game Boy Advance SP when I was 4 years old, and I haven't stopped playing video games ever since. A huge impact on me being into video games was actually my dad, who is a big gamer himself. We used to play all kinds of games together when I was little, like Elmo's Letter Adventure, Dora the Explorer, The Search for Pirate Pig's Treasure, Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, Spider-Man, Mario Bros. 3, and even Grand Theft Auto, which in hindsight maybe I shouldn't have been playing that game at the age of 5, but I turned out fine, so it's okay. For the longest time, my gaming experience as a kid was heavily impacted by my dad, and when he would play a game, I would either play as well or watch, and vice versa. This was a great introduction to me playing and discovering video games, but I was still finding my own genres and favorite titles. Back in these Stone Age days, me and my dad used to go to Blockbuster literally every week, and we used to rent games. This was one of the main places where we both got games out of our regular rotation, and one day my dad finds this game called Okami. And I have never heard of it, but my dad had a pretty basic understanding of the mechanics and said that you have to draw things in the game. Now, I have always liked art since I was little as well, so the prospect of playing a game where you draw things seemed very cool, so I figured I'd give it a go. I popped that sucker into the Wii and immediately fell in love. My first playthrough of Okami at this time was not a fantastic one. Back in the day, we didn't have unlimited access to the internet like we do now, so I couldn't look up walkthroughs, and I had a very bad habit of just not reading the text other characters say to you, and Okami is certainly a game where you need to read. So from what I can remember, I clocked in over 20 hours of this game without even fighting Orochi once. I vividly remember spending hours and hours in Shinshu Fields just fighting random monsters and completing every side quest under the sun. And when I was done with the side quests, I kind of just dicked around and tried to get to out of reach areas I didn't realize would only become accessible after I played more of the game. But honestly, for me, it didn't matter I wasn't completing any major story beats. I was having fun just running around, exploring the places I had access to, completing the many side quests the game had to offer, playing the fishing minigame in Agata Forest. Oh man, I played that minigame so freaking much. But I really did enjoy it for what it was, and it was fine never making progress in it. Eventually though, it had to go back to Blockbuster, and I seemingly forgot about it, figuring that fighting Orochi would be the end of the game anyway, so it was fine to just return it and move on. For some time, I continued to put the memory of Okami aside for things like Super Paper Mario, Epic Mickey, and Trauma Center New Blood, which is actually something I want to talk about in the future, but that's for another time. Until one day I was maybe 12, me and my dad went to our local game store, and wouldn't you know, Okami was there. And of course, I reminisced on the time I spent playing it and remembered really enjoying it. So I had to get it, or more like my dad bought it for me because I asked a million times. So I went home with the game, popped it into my Wii once more, and as it turns out, the game was so much better when you actually read the dialogue properly. I considered this second time playing the game my first proper playthrough. This was the first time I connected with the characters, the first time I figured out the battle system, the first time I explored more areas, more lore, more story beats, and as I played the game properly for the first time, I realized a few things. Number one, this was a game I played entirely on my own. My dad did a lot of the actual game playing when we used to play games together because I usually sucked at them. But this game I actually played on my own, and I played it well. My dad was the one who would watch watch me play it from time to time, and that made me feel like I was growing as a gamer. Bringing me to number 2. This was the first game I felt I connected with personally myself. It was something I enjoyed for me, a genre I liked for me, and once I completed my full playthrough of this game, I realized number 3. This was the best game I had played at the time, hands down. This game itself would go on to shape the kinds of games I would seek out in the future. I sought out games with rich stories, stylized visuals, and even RPG aspects as well, which are still staples in my gaming libraries now. Okami was heavily inspired by Japanese folklore and culture, and had lots of monsters in it, with magical powers, including the main character, Amaterasu herself. I'm sure you know what that influence got me into. Okami was the perfect game to help me really find out who I was as a gamer, and find my own games and interests, and really shape this as a hobby I would continue to enjoy for years and years to come. And this was just my experience playing it on the fucking Wii. Fast forward all the way to Christmas 2017, and I opened up Okami HD for the PS4. This remake changed my life even more. The HD remake of this game was gorgeous, and playing it with a PlayStation controller was lands better than trying to control it with the Wiimote. I again played this HD version inside and out for the PS4, and then, even to this day, I have purchased Okami again for the 3rd time on my Switch. I've also considered getting the Steam version of it because why the fuck not? Going off on a little aside here, but Okami for the Wii right now in the case with everything intact in the year of our Lord 2024 is going for a whopping $12 Canadian. Mario Party 9, which is considered to be the worst Wii game I own, is going for almost $60 fucking Canadian. And not to mention the fact that the HD remake for the PS4 is currently $26.99, and on the Switch it is $24.99 right now. At the time of writing the script, Okami HD on Steam is on sale for $12.49. $12.49. So let's say even if I bought Okami for the Wii at the highest price on record on price charting, which is $20, and then I bought it for the PS4 and the Switch, that comes to a total of $71.98. That's less than buying a single regularly priced Switch game. Buying the Steam version on top of that only totals to $84.47, which is less than most PlayStation 5 games. And I haven't even scratched the surface with this game, but on average, you will play Okami for about 33 hours to complete it. And that is without doing any side quests and doing minimal exploring. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, another action-adventure game, is $89.99 currently, and has an average playtime of 11 hours. So whichever way you spin it, and maybe you want to laugh at me for buying the same game 3 to 4 times, you have to admit that this is some value of the motherfuckest. Full disclaimer here, I know that Okami as a game is not as popular as these other titles I am comparing it to, but it isn't some indie game. Okami, while being made and developed by Clover Studios, was literally published by Capcom. The same Capcom selling Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, a garbage game in my opinion, which took me like an afternoon to complete, for $49.99. I cannot stress how cheap and possibly completely underpriced and underappreciated Okami is. But yeah, this thing is way cheap and easily accessible. So basically what I'm saying is, fucking play it, pinche pendejo. What was I saying again? Oh yes. Okami was such an integral part of my gaming experience and journey. But what is the game itself about? I've went on and on about how important it is to me personally and emotionally, but what's the draw of this game? Well, for that I am going to take you on the entire journey with me, an in-depth recap of the whole game from beginning to end. So with that being said, be warned. I will be spoiling this game in its entirety. So if you haven't played it yet and don't want to be spoiled, maybe come back to this video after you have played it. Or leave the video on mute and play it in the background because your boy will always take the watch hours. No, I'm just joking, but yes, there will be full spoilers for the entire game. We have a lot to cover, so let's just jump right into the story of Okami. The game starts with a cutscene showing how 100 years ago, a warrior named Nagi fought against an evil 8-headed serpent named Orochi with a wolf by his side. This wolf, named Shiranui, ended up dying in the fight against Orochi while protecting Nagi, as he won the fight. We are then shown a statue that was made to show respects to Shiranui, who bravely gave their life protecting the village. We cut to present day in the game and see that a mysterious figure takes the sword that had sealed Orochi away 100 years prior. Taking this sword once again began unleashed the evil beast, spreading a curse across the entire land of Nippon, which is a fictional representation of Japan itself. While this curse spreads throughout all of Nippon, the statue of Shiranui, which is located in Kamiki Village, is enchanted by Sakuya, a wood sprite. And Shiranui is reincarnated as the one and only Okami Amaterasu, a white wolf goddess who can control the sunrise. Soon after, we are introduced to our companion character Isun, who is literally a horny bug artist who was literally living in the boobs of Sakuya, drawing fan art of her. Great. Sakuya explains that she has stored the rest of her power in a peach fruit on a guardian tree, and in order to restore Kamiki Village to its former state, we will have to find a way to cut it down. Isun accompanies us, deciding to stay with Amaterasu for the time being while she collects the 13 brush techniques, as Isun wants to learn them as well. They make their way to a celestial gate where we encounter the first of many brush gods, Yomigami, summoned by completing a constellation with one of the game's main mechanics, your celestial brush. This brush will be used throughout the entire game to draw various different things using brush techniques we find throughout the story. The brush techniques really help with the story pacing, as there are certain ones that you'll need to find and master before reaching certain parts of the world. And as an added bonus, there are optional ones to learn which can help you in combat, as well as even some you can upgrade with yen. Yomigami's brush technique, Rejuvenation, allows us to restore parts of a stardust river so we may cross it and venture forth, coming to a cave with a statue of Nagi. Rejuvenating his sword grants us access to another god, Tachigami, one of my favorites in the game. This little mouse with his giant sword gives us the power slash technique, which we can use to cut down Sakuya's fruit and restore Kamiki Village. We return to the village, cut down the fruit, and then raise the sun. We are then introduced to another one of my favorite characters in the entire game, Mr. Orange. And while he is speaking to us, we get ambushed by demons and get our first taste of combat, and honestly, it's fucking fire. Throughout the game, you are able to get a variety of weapons or divine instruments, from glaives, reflectors, and even rosaries. Each of these weapons can be equipped as either a sub or main weapon, giving you a lot of customization. We start off with a standard reflector, and it packs a bit of a punch, but nothing will ever beat the Infinity Judge, my beloved. The combat mixes hack and slash with your brush techniques, as some of them can be used to fight enemies, with some enemies requiring specific brush techniques to beat down. When you enter fights later on in the game, they are triggered by you running into floating demon scrolls. This action puts you in a small arena where you can fight various enemies, and sometimes you fight multiple at a time. While you can escape from these regular enemies in these arenas by slashing at glowing parts of the walls, you can also actively avoid enemies by running away from the scrolls. You can even get an item later on that makes them ignore you, so you have more control over which regular enemy battles you want to engage in. Though it is a good idea to fight if you want to grind out yen. The first fight isn't anything too difficult, and from here we are able to explore the village and help different NPCs with our brush techniques, gaining praise which can be used to upgrade certain skills like our ink pots and health. After exploring for a bit, we meet the village idiot, the village's warrior, Susano, who is a direct descendant of Nagi, the warrior from the prologue. We train with Susano, which ultimately equates to him swinging his wooden sword around while we use our power slash to actually destroy the rocks that he is slashing at. We break a rock that was placed at the village's entrance, allowing us to access the next main area, Shinshu Fields. From here we are tasked with restoring all of Nippon to its former glory, and ridding the curse that has spread across the land. Sakuya tells us that there are guardian saplings that we have to bloom in each village and city to rid the curse there. And with our new goal in mind, we head off to Shinshu Fields. While entering Shinshu Fields, we can see that the entire field is cursed, and entering the cursed area, our health drains slowly, not allowing us to explore very far. We find ourselves in a cave where we do some puzzles and fight some monsters, and trees, until we find Susano, who is basically doing nothing, and we also eventually find the guardian sapling that Sakuya was telling us about. We grow the sapling into a tree using the power of the sun, and then encounter Sakigami, who teaches us the bloom technique so that we may bloom the guardian tree and many more in our journey. Blooming this tree rids the curse in Shinshu Fields and allows us to now explore this area. Usually in Okami, when you enter a new area, you will be tasked to find the guardian sapling, bloom it, and then gain full access to the area from there after dispelling the curse. We can do a few different things in Shinshu Fields, like get a quest to fight certain strong stronger demons who show up only at night, talk to a dude who smokes a pipe and makes firecrackers, who we can interact with to help make a firecracker for him, leading us to meet Bakugami and unlock the cherry bomb technique, which allows us to create bombs and blow up certain barriers with glowing cracks in them. We can also visit a sensei to learn the ancient technique of pissing on your enemies, which, yes, is something I unlock in literally every playthrough, no matter how expensive it is. It's fucking hilarious. Outside of these things, there really isn't much else that we can do, as the way to Agata Forest, our next stop, is through a flooded tunnel, which we can't swim all the way through without drowning. So after fucking around in Shinshu Fields, it's time to head back to Kamiki Village. Back in Kamiki, with our newly acquired bloom power, we are tasked with blooming all the dead trees in the village. Mr. Orange is hyped up enough to bust it down for us, and we help him bloom the guardian tree and return it to its former glory, whilst also returning Sequoia to her former glory. At this point, we meet Hasagami, who teaches us the water lily brush technique, so we can now create lily pads to traverse over the water and get to Agata Forest. As soon as we enter Agata Forest, we explore around a little bit to locate the guardian sapling and bloom it. Then we are introduced to my actual all-time favorite character, Waka, God's gift to men, and a gift he is. Waka immediately starts beef with us though, so we have to kick his ass. Waka speaks a lot about prophecies and is a major character in this entire game. He also has a lightsaber for some reason. Waka is purposely vague with us and always hinting at knowing a lot more than he is explaining, and him, Amaterasu, and Isun have this playful banter and rivalry throughout the game. After defeating Waka, he explains the story that we know thus far, confirming that he knows about Orochi, the gods, and the curse that is spreading across the land. He also sees Amaterasu as she truly is. When most characters only see a normal-looking white wolf, Waka can see her in her true godly form. Waka does explain that Amaterasu has been weakened in her current form, before dropping that he saw a shadowy figure fleeing the place where Orochi was sealed away. He gives us some random nonsense prophecy and flies away. We meet up with other residents of the forest, like some guy, his kid, and Susanoo is also here, yapping on about something called Crimson something or other, and swinging around his wooden ass sword again. There is also a merchant here who sells you rare things in exchange for demon fangs, which you can get in a number of ways, most commonly by slicing enemies in half after you kill them with your melee weapon. But there is a much better way to get demon fangs, which is something I mentioned before, the ancient art of pissing on your enemies. Once you get enough yen to unlock the Golden Fury technique, you can literally take a hot piss on your opponents in battle and they will drop a demon fang. This attack is both hilarious and incredibly useful because you can trade demon fangs for lots of cool stuff as the game progresses. Moving back to the kid and his dog for a moment, it turns out that the kid's dog got lost in a cave behind a locked door, but the key to said door was swallowed by a giant fish, and you're tasked with helping the kid save him by, you guessed it, playing a fishing minigame. Listen, you know a game is going to absolutely slap when there's a fishing minigame in it, and this one is balanced so nicely. You use your brush to draw a line from the fishing pole to the shadows of the fish in the water. Then you move your joystick back and forth in the opposite direction of the fish until a QTE comes up. Once you hit the button, you then use your brush to slice it. Depending on the fish's size, you might have to slice it 2 or 3 times. Fishing is a great resource when it comes to yen, as you can sell your fish, and then the longer you fish, the rarer your catches become and the more expensive you can sell them for. All in all, it's a fantastic system. Moving on to the next part of the game though, we are off to rescue the kid's dog, key in hand, traversing a dungeon-like cave. There are a few puzzles in here that require you to fight a new enemy who has a flower you can bloom on its back in order to attack its core and defeat it, as well as an introduction to a kind of annoying puzzle mechanic that will show up a few times over the course of this game. That being rolling balls around. The physics of these fucking balls are so sensitive and easy to completely toss in the wrong direction, and you can only do this perfectly on the first try if you have played this game multiple times, which I have, but they are super annoying to deal with regardless. At a certain point in the cave, we cross a bridge that crumbles under us and aren't able to backtrack, having another puzzle to complete introducing us to Blockhead, a sentient wall that guards entrances. You have to mark him with your brush in the same spots shown when you headbutt him, thus breaking his weak points and allowing you to pass. The reason I bring this up is because this is also a reoccurring puzzle that is sometimes the bane of my existence as the game progresses, but the first one is pretty straightforward. After this, we find a key, do some platforming, fight some demons, and get a new brush technique from Okami, now allowing us to use vines to hop from flower to flower and reach higher ground. Using this technique to lift a giant rock, we find a secret passage to our first boss fight, and also the forest kid's missing dog. This boss fight is against the Spider Queen, who, honest to God, is one of the most disturbing enemies in this entire game, and probably in any video game. Something about her is just extremely off-putting. Maybe it's the fact that she has no eyes, long black hair, sharp fangs, or it might be the fact that in order to defeat her, you have to open up her body by peeling away pieces of it with vines and then hack and slash giant fucking eyeballs that explode with liquid when they are hit. Yeah, this thing is nightmare fuel. But Amy kicks her ass and rescues the forest kid's dog. From here, we can follow the forest kid to a bridge that has been taken out that he intends to fix. But unfortunately, Susanoo comes barreling down the river on a giant log and ropes Amy, Isun, and the kid into a situation. We then have 2 minutes to attach vines to each branch of the log in order to stop it. And once we do so, it snaps right into place as a new bridge. Convenient. Also, Susanoo just kind of disappears here, and we also part ways with the forest kid and his doggo, continuing on to Taka Pass. At this point, the formula of the game is pretty standard. You go to a new place that's cursed with limited mobility, find the guardian sapling, bloom it, and bing bam boom, you're able to rid the curse and explore the area. Now, Taka Pass connect to a bunch of different places and villages and plot points that you can possibly do out of order, so I'm going to try to explain the story beats in the correct order here. When you bloom the guardian sapling, Waka makes his appearance again to gloat that his vague-ass prophecy actually played out, and then fights you again for absolutely no reason. Naturally, I just piss on him. After defeating him, he mentions that there is a barrier in front of the moon cave where Orochi was sealed away, and the only thing that can break the barrier is something called a serpent crystal. With that knowledge in mind, what do we do next? Well, obviously we go play around with some moles and their abandonment issues #1 leader, Molly. From here we can go find Susanoo in Kusa Village, just doing nothing again. He is literally just sleeping in an alleyway for no good reason. Kusa Village seems to be cursed, but there is no actual curse zone, and your powers are draining slowly, with you actually unable to use them at all in here. We can meet another one of my favorite side characters here named Mr. Bamboo, who is upset that he can't sell his bamboo wares at the village festival because of this curse. And gosh darn it if I wasn't going to absolutely risk everything for this man to sell his wares. Anyways, after this we make our way up to Princess Fusei, who explains that there is a monster at the Gale Shrine by the name of Crimson Helm, and that in order to defeat him, we have to gather the canine warriors who have scattered themselves around the village and lands. We get a handy dandy magical tracker that can find the locations of these dogs, and it takes us to 4 located in the village itself, and a 5th one that appears back where Princess Fusei was after we collect the others. This one though wants to fight us to prove that we are worthy of carrying the magic tracker, and of course, we kick his ass. Princess Fusei explains that there are 3 dogs still missing, but they don't seem to be in the village, so we have to go look for them in different locations. With our first one taking us to our next important spot, Saza's Sanctuary. Upon entering Saza's Sanctuary, you discover that their boss, Big Daddy Jamba, yes, that's actually his name, is missing his daughter and won't let you inside the sanctuary without her returning to him. In order to find her whereabouts, we get introduced to more undeniable creepy characters known as Mrs. and Mr. Cutter. They both immediately attack you if you go near them and threaten to eat you multiple times in their dialogues. By blasting a hole in their roof and waiting until nighttime, you can sneak inside and drag one of them into the moonlight, revealing that they were both demons in human disguises. After giving them a proper ass whooping, we come to find that they had kidnapped Jamba's daughter, and we can take her back to her father in one piece, allowing us to access Saza's Sanctuary. In here, we play another mini game while trying to dig for water in the hot springs as it's all dried up, and Mr. Bamboo joins us, which is truly something special. The digging minigame comes down to you guiding an NPC through a maze-like area using your brush techniques to help them through it, getting them to the bottom where they tell you to dig in a certain spot, causing, in this case, the hot springs to replenish. After this, we are visited by Nuragami and taught the water sprout technique, allowing us to now manipulate water and use it to travel upwards with fountains in certain locations. With our newly acquired brush skill, we move on deeper into Saza's sanctuary where we come across a crying bird who lost his dog. This information causes the canine tracker to activate, and we use it to find his lost dog, who is actually one of the canine warriors we were looking for. This one also wants a fight, so we kick his ass. And instead of going back with us to Princess Fusei, he gives up his power as he has to stay with his owner, who's an anthro bird. Not weird at all for a bird to own a dog, no. With one canine warrior's power in hand, we set off to Agato Forest to search for the next one. We do run into Kushi, a sake brewer from Kamiki Village, as she is gathering water for her sake she is making for the festival. This sake actually plays a bit of an important role later on, so I thought it was worth mentioning. After we help Kushi with filling her sake barrel, Susanoo shows up and demons start attacking. We once again help him slash away the monsters, and this causes him to talk to himself about how his wooden sword is possessed, since no shit, it wouldn't work like our power slash. It's a wooden fucking sword. After all this nonsense, we return to the forest kid whose dog has been swallowed by a fish. And of course, our good old magic tracker comes back on, so we have to help him save his dog again through the power of fishing. This time, however, we encounter Yumigami, who gives us the brush technique Crescent, so we can now make it nighttime whenever we want. Unsurprisingly, Forest Kid's dog hates the fact that we just saved him from being killed, so he wants to fight us. And once again, we kick his ass. He is the same as the dog from Saza's sanctuary, where he doesn't want to leave his owner, the forest kid, so he gives us his power. This leaves us one more canine warrior, and this one is in Kamiki Village. Traveling back there, the dog Hayabasu lets us know he will only speak to us at nighttime. So of course, we force nightfall on the village with our brush, and wouldn't you know, we fight him as well. Another unnecessary ass-kicking later, we have Hayabasu's power. He actually says he can't leave because he feels that he will have to protect his owner, who is a little boy, mentioning the story of Orochi from 100 years ago, and how a dog protected a little boy then as well, thinking his fate will be the same. With all our power orbs in hand, or paw, I guess, we return to Princess Fusei, gather all the power orbs from the other warriors, and then enter the Gale Shrine to fight Crimson Helm. We also meet Susanoo in here, and wouldn't you know, he's sitting around doing fuck all once again until we open the door to impending evil, and this motherfucker just runs the fuck in. Inside the Gale Shrine, there are some enemies to fight and some puzzles to complete, helping us get to the top of the shrine, which has a windmill on it. Once up there, we get the wind going again with our brush and meet Kazagami, who gives us the Gale Storm technique. Now we can make it windy as fuck. Nice. We also need to complete a few puzzles in the lower levels to battle Crimson Helm, which is an armor-covered bull with swords that charges at you. Hitting him lots of times will cause his armor to fall off, revealing an engulfed skeleton that we can blow out with Gale Storm and then do some real damage to. TLDR, we kick his ass. Susanoo shows up at the end just for us to assist him once more with the final blow. He freaks out once more, thinking his sword is possessed, and runs away after possibly hallucinating Orochi. But we don't have time for that right now because, as it turns out, Crimson Helm was guarding the Serpent Crystal, and aw shit, Waka is back. Waka takes the crystal before we can, explaining that he is going to break the barrier at the Moon Cave. We return to Kamiki Village, where we find the villagers all outside of Susanoo's house, begging him to come out, while it is revealed he drank all of Kushi's sacred sake that she was planning on using to defeat Orochi, should his return be real. But that's not the only thing that is revealed here. Susanoo admits, while drunk out of his mind, that he was the one who released Orochi, fed up with living in his ancestor Nagi's shadow. After this is found out, the story of Orochi plays out just as it did 100 years ago, with Kushi's house being marked as a sacrifice. Susanoo doesn't come out of his house, leaving Ami and Kushi to go confront Orochi themselves, with Kushi even revealing she had brewed a second sake for the beast. Traveling with Kushi to the Moon Cave, we meet up with Waka again. He breaks the barrier and Kushi gets taken by Orochi, leaving us to go in after her. But Waka is also kind of a huge dick here, as he didn't come in with us and the barrier resealed, trapping Ami and Isun in the Moon Cave. With nowhere else to go, the pair journey into Orochi's lair. Once inside, we are first tasked with making a disguise to fool all the demons there, so of course, I become the imposter, and we push forward. In Orochi's lair, we find ourselves helping a chef to create an appetizer, using all of our brush techniques thus far, as well as learning a new one after encountering Mogami, who gives us Infernal so we can now control fire. And also we end up doing another one of those awful ball puzzles. This one is probably the worst one in the game because there is a bunch of different holes in the ground and the ball can just completely fall in them, while you just tap it very slightly. Once we get that over with and we get the appetizer quest done, we venture to the main arena and take on the dreaded Orochi himself. Oh, and also Susanoo is here to say some nonsense, talking about how he's going to slay Orochi himself and then proceeds not to. Orochi's fight is unique as we have to intoxicate each of his 8 heads by using the water sprout brush technique to draw the sake to Orochi's many mouths when they let out a roar. Once you intoxicate a head twice, it falls down, allowing you to hack and slash it. You will have to do this to all 8 of Orochi's heads, but Ami is a goddess, so we kick Orochi's 8-headed ass. Susanoo, always wanting to have the last word, appears so that we may play out the prophecy. His wooden sword turns gold magically, and we help with slashing the heads off Orochi, with Susanoo dealing the final blow, saving Kushi, and returning to Kamiki Village to celebrate. And that's the end!
You thought it was over. Ha.
Hell no. Did I neglect to mention that this game has 3 arcs and this was only the first one? Well, settle in because there's still a ton of story to cover. While I do think the first arc of this game, the Orochi arc, is the longest and most detailed one of the whole playthrough, I will say that the next 2 arcs are not lacking at all in the story or gameplay department. After defeating Orochi, we find out that a mysterious evil force emerged from Orochi's body and split off in all different directions, setting us up nicely for our continued journey across Nippon. For now though, we get to celebrate in Kamiki Village, with all the characters that we met throughout the first arc. And even Mr. Bamboo, who finally gets to sell his bamboo wares. We love to see it. After chilling out for a bit, we start making our way to Taka Pass and the city checkpoint to continue on to the next area, Rishima Coast, where the second arc of the game will take place. Now, I will say the second arc of the game gets very nutty, and while I explain it to you, you might think I'm lying, but I will continue to have the gameplay footage of what is happening for you to see. Just know it's going to get very weird up in here. Entering Rishima Coast, we follow the same format as Arc 1, where we must find the Guardian Sapling and bloom it to rid the curse and fully explore the area. Once the curse is gone, we can help a dude find his lost rabbit, fight some monsters, feed some animals, and learn the even more ancient technique of shitting on our enemies. Once we are done fucking around here, we can make our way to Cyan City, a city where most of this arc takes place. We do another digging minigame here to get the water flowing through the city once more, and some guy with a Marge Simpson necklace can lower the bridge for us again after he does some fishing. Once we can make it across the bridge, we are stopped by our good old troll Waka, as he says more cryptic and nonsense shit. Isun calls him pretty and explains that the whole city is getting sick due to a mist that is circulating around. Even the emperor has fallen very ill, and the queen, Himiko, is seemingly doing nothing about it, locking herself in her room. We then continue on to meet a character named Rao, or as Isun likes to call her, Busty Babe. She is a high priestess and serves under Queen Himiko. She introduces more information to us about a creature called the Water Dragon who has been terrorizing the citizens of Rishima Coast for some time, with her thinking the Water Dragon has something to do with the mist making everybody sick. She asks us to go get her prayer slips, which we find by the Emperor's palace, and notice the green mist is coming from there. Returning the prayer slips to Rao, she explains that there is a sunken ship that was carrying something called the Fox Rods. The Water Dragon sunk the ship before the Fox Rods could get to Queen Himiko, and Rao wants to go explore the sunken ship and go find them. Using our powers of the moon, we drain the water around the ship and meet up with Rao to explore. Rao allows us to break cursed barriers with her prayer slips, as well as help with some puzzles around the ship. We fight some fucked up looking crab and shark enemies, almost get got by a giant seaweed hand, and in the end don't find the fox rods, instead finding a lucky mallet that can be used to shrink us down. Isud remarks that Waka had mentioned us getting into the palace through a tiny crack in its defense, so that's where we head off. But not before having our first encounter with the water dragon that chases us all the way back to shore. We venture off into the Emperor's palace, and using the lucky mallet, we get hammered and head inside a small crack in the wall. Since we're tiny, we also get to see Isun's true form, as he isn't actually a little bug but a human-looking creature. He saddles up Ami, and we can use him to grab some things that are out of our reach normally. While traversing through the blades of grass in the palace, we come across an imprisoned girl, wearing what looks like an astronaut helmet made out of bamboo. And I know what you may be thinking. There is no way space travel is a thing in this game. And I really do wish I could laugh in disbelief and ignorance with you. But for now, let's just move on. We eventually enter a room full of mist coming from a flask and encounter Kazagami, a drunken sheep who gives us the Veil of Mist brush technique, which allows us to slow down time. We press onward into the palace, soon coming across the Emperor himself, revealing that the mist is coming from him. So naturally, we jump headfirst into this dude's mouth. The setting of inside the Emperor's body is disgusting, but we have to press forward to find out what's causing the mist. Lo and behold, it's not a flu. It's actually a cursed demon ghost named Blight. As weird as this may sound, Blight is actually a very cool looking boss. He's a ghost that wears armor and has many swords stabbed into the armor, attacking us with these very swords, one of which actually holds his power. We need to find the sword and attack it to deal damage to him. After we defeat Blight, one of the dark clouds that came from Orochi's body when he died dispels from the Emperor, most likely coming from Blight. The city is now cleared of its illness, and for a moment we control the Emperor to use him to open the jail cell the girl from earlier is trapped in. As it turns out, the Emperor didn't mean to trap her and did so under the control of Blight, so she is set free, and we come to find that she is the granddaughter of our homeboy Mr. Bamboo. And she tells us while she was in prison, she had thoughts of her past, mainly that she doesn't remember any of it or where she came from. She says she has a feeling that she must go back to Saza Sanctuary to uncover more of her past, and yeah, she's from outer space. Why? Not a clue in the world. She just is. We literally help her dig up a giant bamboo rocket ship. In a surprisingly emotional moment between her and Mr. Bamboo, he explains that he found her stranded as a baby in the bamboo rocket ship, nursing her back to health and raising her. She departs in the rocket ship after shedding some tears, saying that she needs to leave to uncover her past. As weird and out of nowhere as this plot seems to be, it's actually very heartfelt, and lets our side characters have more of their stories explored. Plus, this kind of comes back later on as well in a weird way. Who would have thought? On that note, we head back to Cyan City and towards Queen Himiko's palace, as we can now freeze time and get past her guards. When we meet Queen Himiko, she gives us a bit of a lore dump, explaining that there is a monster stronghold she has been trying to locate on Oni Island, a magical island that changes its location. Queen Himiko has a crystal ball that will allow her to not only see the future, but locate where Oni Island will be next. Though it's a very risky situation, as Himiko has to use lots of power to find it, and also monsters might try and stop her. She even puts up a protective barrier around herself for precaution. Oni Island itself also has a barrier around it, which Himiko explains can only be broken by the water dragon, which is currently out of control as we know. This is where the story gets weird again. In order for Himiko to regain control over the water dragon, we must go to the Dragonian domain and speak to the ruler of the Dragonians who live in an underwater palace. Again, what the fuck is going on? Queen Himiko then gives us the Hispanic Dream, a border key, and we carry forward to the other side of Hiroshima coast. We immediately run into Waka, who is here to irritate Isun again, even taking a jab at his art, implying that he stole his art he claims is his own, and then ran away with it. Hashtag Isun is over party 2024. But besides that, he has nothing else to tell us. We meet up with a kid here who is getting bullied randomly because he's saying that he has a friend who is an emissary of the Dragon Palace. After shooing away the bullies, we find out that this emissary, whose name is Orca, appears to this kid at the edge of a dock, but only during the sunrise. You can make it nightfall and sunrise manually, and once you raise the sun at the dock, Orca shows up, who, unsurprisingly, is just an orca whale. From here, you can use Orca to traverse the ocean without having to deal with the water dragon attacking you. There are multiple islands you can visit here, 3 of which can give you upgraded brush techniques for your Power Slash, Cherry Bomb, and Veil of Mist, but you do have to cough up quite a bit of yen for them. One of these islands has a giant tower on it, one that you can hear meowing from. Once you go inside this tower, you climb the walls of it by jumping on and sticking to parts of the walls with paw print patterns on them. Climbing all the way up to the tower and feeding the cat at the very top causes you to encounter Kabagami and learn the catwalk brush technique. Now, wherever there is a statue of Kabagami, you can draw a line from it up the wall and use the paw print pattern that appears to climb and reach new heights. With this this newfound power, we can make our way to a long stretch of land, speaking to a man there, and find out how to activate a whirlpool galaxy, which Orca informed us was the way to get into the Dragon Palace. Using our Galestorm technique, we rotate the galaxy and the whirlpool appears, allowing us to hop back onto Orca and enter the Dragon Palace. Without questioning how Ami and Isun can breathe underwater, we enter the Dragon Palace and speak to the leader of the Dragonians, Otahime, who drops a lot of exposition on us about the water dragon. Basically, the Dragonian species has the power to turn into giant water dragons, and when evil spirits led by the Dark Lord from Oni Island attacked the Dragon Palace, their old king transformed to fight them off. Unfortunately though, this fight ended with the water dragon losing control. Otahime explains that we can't regain control over the water dragon, but we can harness its power using the dragon orb, which is located within the water dragon. So just like the Emperor, we solve this situation by jumping into the water dragon's mouth. While inside the water dragon looks a lot nicer than inside the Emperor, the dragon's guts are filled with some acidic red liquid, and we have to essentially slice open his insides to flood his stomach with this liquid so we may use it to free the dragon orb, which is tangled up in its guts. Wonderful. Dragon orb in hand, we get ambushed by the evil forces that have taken over the water dragon. Fox enemies start attacking us, but as always, we kick their asses, and we also obtain the fox rods that Rao had mentioned a while back. Unfortunately, all this fighting and the red liquid we flooded the water dragon's body with causes it to die, and we make a daring escape. The spirit of the Dragonian king appears to us, explaining that he swallowed the dark instrument, the fox rods, and this drove him to madness. But he did so to protect everyone, as the Dark Lord has stunted power without the fox rods. The king warns that evil creatures will try and get a hold of the rods at any cost, and as we return to the surface, Rao shows up, asking for the fox rods. In what can only be described as a fit of stupidity, Ami gives her the instrument and she runs away, claiming she is going to use the fox rods to save Himiko. Returning to Otahime, we have to tell her the sad news of her husband's death, when the dragon orb shows us a vision of Rao getting chased by a dark entity. Rushing off to go save her, we come across a ghostly figure of Rao, leading us to a hidden cave with a secret passageway that takes us right to Himiko's palace. We also find a skeleton down there wearing the exact same clothes as Rao, which should be the moment that Ami knew she fucked up. Arriving at Himiko's palace, we find Himiko slaughtered, with Rao standing off to the side claiming a monster attacked them. It isn't long before Rao's facade is uncovered and we find that she is Ninetails, an evil monster commanded by the Dark Lord. After a fight with a hybrid of Ninetails and Rao, Ninetails runs off and we are left to mourn Himiko, who presents herself in her crystal ball that uses the last of her power to unveil the location of Oni Island. Running back to the land where we spun the galaxy vortex, Otahime is there, stating that she is going to use the dragon orb to transform into a water dragon herself, to make a bridge to Oni Island and break the barrier for us to cross, and so we do. Oni Island's main gimmick is that we meet this slip of paper, literally, he's a floating slip of paper named Toby, and we do so many different obstacle courses and races with the lad. During these races, we come across a statue of Gekigami. Repairing it grants us an audience with the giant tiger himself, and he gives us the lightning strike brush technique, so we can now control and redirect lightning. We can clear some more puzzles and barriers with this newly found power, interacting with the oddly advanced for the setting tech, and continuing our way through Oni Island. We do also come across our old friend Blockhead as well, but the points we have to hit on him aren't too difficult, so we press onwards. Eventually, we come to the last trial against Toby, and when we defeat him in the race, he straight up dies. The game once again has this extremely emotional moment with dialogue between Isun and Toby about how Toby had been waiting for a great opponent like Ami and can now die happy when he is literally a floating piece of paper. With that top 10 anime death contender out of the way, we climb to the top of the tower at Oni Island and complete a constellation to summon Ninetails. The Ninetails boss fight breaks down into two parts. After attacking a few times, Ninetails will hold her sword up in the sky, at which point we can shock it using our lightning powers, causing Ninetails to split off into 9 fox-human hybrids that we have to fight with, each having their own health bar. When using any of our brush magic skills, Ninetails can actually cancel out our attacks with her own brush magic, so we have to act fast. Even though Ninetails was made up to be this super strong dark entity, just like all the others, we kick her ass. Once defeated, another black mass of smoke releases from her and heads north, just like what happened to Blight. Isun laments that they will have to head north next, but he worries about it, hinting at his past a bit. Once we head back from Oni Island, we are immediately stopped stopped by Waka, who tells us there is a storm above Shinshu Fields and directs us to a specific spot there for us to travel to so we can continue on. This completes the second arc of the game, which I think is by far the weirdest one. Though that's not to say Arc 3 isn't weird as well, as that arc introduces more nonsense to the mix, but we will get to that soon. The third arc honestly has to be one of my favorites in general, as it does a great job tying up loose ends in the story and giving us lots of background and lore of a lot of the world, but also our main characters as well, specifically Isun. In Shinshu Fields, we find a mysterious tower which we can zap with our lightning, revealing a passageway that takes us to northern Nippon, specifically to Kamui, a wintry land that seems to almost be in a perpetual night. Entering Kamui for the first time, we must rid the curse by blooming the guardian sapling, of course, but before we do that, we meet another pretty man. I mean, another great character named Oki. Oki picks a fight with us in human form first, but can transform into a wolf just like almost everyone else within Kamui. So he also fights us in wolf form after. Wolf or not, surprise surprise, we kick his ass. After the fight with Oki, he explains to us that him and the rest of the Onna tribe have been kept safe from monsters for years. However, now the mountains have been taken over by twin demons named Lechku and Nechku. He explains that because of this, an extreme cold is flooding the land and putting everyone in danger. He also speaks of a prophecy that the village's sacred sword will glow silver when an ice wall is shattered and a path to the heavens revealed. After blooming the guardian sapling, we can head to Wepkir and find it completely frozen over, with the small amount of the Onna tribe villagers left to huddle in their homes. As it turns out, Isun knows a lot of the villagers, and they know him as well. Some even saying that Isun should go check up on his own village, with Isun protesting in response. One of the villagers won't let us see the village elder, prompting us to backtrack when we are stopped by another villager, Kai, who explains that all the dark shadows we have seen escaping from various monsters we have fought have all made their way back to Kamui, and into the shrine where Lechku and Nechku reside. After talking to Kai, we are allowed to speak to the village elder, who dumps more exposition on us about how Kai's younger sister Laika has gone missing, and she is the only one with the ability to perform the volcanic incantation that will make the volcanoes erupt to warm the land of Kamui. Now that our quest to locate Laika is set, Kai accompanies us to Yoshpet and the Forest of Confusion. Before entering the forest, we are once again visited by Girly Pop, who says he's looking for a path to the heavens. Isun immediately thinks he is talking about murder, but Waka is actually referring to the Ark of Yamato that is buried under ice in Kamui. After he disappears, we follow Kai into the forest, making our way to a clearing, and the Lucky Mallet makes an appearance again so we can get shrunk down. From here, we have to enter a place called Ponkton, home of the Ponkles. However, unlike last time when we shrunk, Isun does not accompany us, making up some excuse to why he can't go in. Within Ponkton, we can interact with many Ponkles, including a girl that has some history with Isun, as well as Isun's grandfather Ishiku, who actually knows who Amaterasu is and reconnects with her. As it turns out, Isun's grandpa traveled with Shiranui and knows Ami has been reincarnated from her. And he also mentions that he would want to travel with her again if he wasn't so old, being upset that she doesn't have a traveling companion, showing that he has no idea where Isun is. We can actually find and enter Isun's house here as well, and, well, he'd be a great Twitter artist, that's for sure. After talking to everyone in town, we return to Ishiku, who tells us how he has disowned Isun after he abandoned his training and ran away with one of his paintings. Apparently, Isun was training to be a celestial envoy like Ishiku, so he could become a guide for the gods, and up and left. F in the chat for Isun. Ishiku then explains to us that we should check out the Spirit Gate, but he does it like Judd from Pet Cemetery, so we return to Isun and explain that we have to go there to look for Laika. Before we officially leave, a girl from Ponkton speaks to Isun, and he is kind of a huge dick to her for no reason, and we ignore her and press onwards to the Spirit Gate. Now, the Spirit Gate concept is kind of weird, but stay with me here. Basically, this giant gate has just been in the forest forever, and no one knows where it came from, and when you enter it, you time travel. Yes, the game that has brought us bamboo space travel, water dragon lore, one of the top 10 anime deaths to ever grace our screen, shape-shifting villagers, tiny bug people who paint naked women, I can't even say that. tiny bug people who paint naked women, and the ability to press A to piss has now brought us time travel in the third arc of the game. Peak story design, really. Just before we are about to travel back in time, Oki appears and joins us as we are brought to the village of Kamiki once again, but 100 years in the past. If 100 years in the past rings a bell for you, it's because that is when Nagi and Shiranui first slayed Orochi and locked him away. And you bet your ass that's the exact point in time that we have returned to. Exploring the village, Isun is acting dense as fuck as we the audience can already tell we have traveled back in time. The villagers are treating Ami with a lot of hostility, and it is because Shiranui was assumed to be Orochi's familiar when she first appeared to the villagers before she fought alongside Nagi to defeat the serpent. We even run into Nagi, who finally knocks some sense into Isun and then tries to knock us around a bit. But just like the rest, we kick his ass. Unfortunately, we kick his ass so hard he passes out, and we have effectively screwed up the past worse than Philip J. Fry did when he became his own grandpa. Because we have done this and the real Shiranui is nowhere to be seen, we grab Nagi, disguise him as a maiden, as the prophecy foretold apparently, even though this is the first time we are hearing of this detail, and we rush off to the moon cave. On our way to the moon cave, we actually fight some monsters from the past, but they are literally aliens, so that's just another thing that this game is throwing into the mix. We make it to the moon cave, Orochi gets mad that Nagi is in drag, even though I think he slays, and we are left to fight Orochi ourselves once again. In a surprising turn of events, Orochi is actually holding Laika captive, so now the plots converge. Oki also comes flying out of nowhere and demands to fight Orochi. Of course we end up fighting him, and the fight is the same as the first one. Orochi is just a bit more powerful, but we get his 8 heads drunk and kick his ass once again for Nagi to deal the final blows and take most of the glory. However, we got Laika back, so all is well in the end. Just before we are about to leave, a giant rock falls on Nagi, seemingly killing him. However, as it turns out, Shiranui actually saved Nagi from the rock, and Ishiku even makes an appearance telling Ami and Isun to return to their regular time as we see Nagi pick up Shiranui like a little baby and take her to safety. Making it back to present day, we bring Laika to the rest of the villagers, but find out that Oki has run off to the Waku shrine, unleashing the cold air from the shrine's doors to ravage the land of Kamui. Before Laika can recite the volcanic incantation, we must go defeat Lechku and Nechku and also find Oki. Wawaku Shrine is another dungeon-like area filled with ice and puzzles along with enemies to fight. While exploring the shrine, we come across Ichigami, who gives us the 13th and final brush technique, Blizzard. Unfortunately, not the Dairy Queen kind though. With all 13 brush techniques recovered, we also unlock the best weapon in the entire game, the Solar Flare, and are almost the strongest that we can possibly be in the whole game. The reason I say almost the strongest is because there is actually a secret holy artifact you can unlock by finding 100 stray beads scattered across the entire game in varying locations that makes you basically invincible. It gives you unlimited health and ink as well as a huge attack boost, but finding these beads is no easy task. Some are unlocked by beating a blockhead with about 1,000,000 points on him to hit, which I have only ever done once in my entire life before, and another is done by defeating some of the most wild Devil Gate trials. I don't have any footage of me defeating the Devil Gate trials in question, as I did them off stream, but one of them has you fighting 2 Wakas, then 2 Evil Rows multiple times, and then finishes with fighting 3 Nagis all at the same fucking time. And if you die, you have to start the entire thing all over. Luckily, I didn't die during the Devil Gate trials or my entire playthrough of this game because I'm just that goated, but my god, are these some of the most grueling things ever. And I still didn't even get all the beads on my 40+ hour playthrough. One day I might unlock this artifact, who knows, but for now, Solar Flare with Gold Dust and our health and ink upgrades are the strongest we're gonna get. Making our way through the rest of Wawaku Shrine and through some of the most patience-testing platforming I have ever dealt with, we arrive at the lair of Nechku and Lechku. The fight with Nechku and Lechku turns epic when Shiranui shows up to help us fight the demons, and both of us absolutely, without a fucking doubt, kick major ass. However, Oki shows up and causes shit to go sideways, and allows the demons to escape, and also causes Shiranui to get extremely hurt in the process. So we must make our way through more patience-testing platforming until we make it to the real fight, where Oki decides he is going to actually fight with us, and we are able to shoot him at at Lechku and Nechku so we can stab them in the face. With Oki realizing that kicking ass is better with friends, we defeat the demons. Shiranui uses the last of her strength to travel back to her time period 100 years in the past, smiling at the fact that Oki's sword has finally started to glow silver after he stopped being a complete eel. His sword glowing silver marks the start of a prophecy, and as he said when we first met him, Laika is able to recite the volcanic incantation properly, and a sheet of ice cracks and an ancient frozen ship rises to the surface. This ship is known as the Ark of Yamato, said to have been a vessel for the gods and also a gateway to the heavens. The door to the ship opens and a rainbow bridge extends, inviting Ami in, but this bridge is the point of no return as well. So once we head inside, there is absolutely no turning back and we are in for it to the end. We head onto the rainbow bridge where Isun parts ways with us, saying that he isn't able to follow us into the Ark. At first it's played off as him being a bit cowardly and as a joke, but soon we are once again visited by Waka, who actually tells Isun that he can't go into the Ark anyways as only celestial beings can enter. And even though Isun does try from here, he is not able to. Waka and Amy then do a cute little dance and head inside. Within the ship, we have to do a boss rush. We have to fight Crimson Helm, Blight, Ninetales, the Spider Queen, and Orochi, yes, for the third time, with getting lore about the Ark on the way. As it turns out, the Ark was taken by monsters as it was once created as a cargo ship to transport monsters by the lunar civilization. Once the ship of the monsters and celestials hit Earth, the monsters and evil spirits started to live there and inhabit Earth. And there is a whole conspiracy here where the celestials whose souls are trapped in the Ark think the Moon Tribe and lunar civilization infested the Ark with monsters on purpose. We also come to learn that when we defeat Orochi, his dark powers were released across the land and gave the monsters from the Ark power. When we defeated them, their dark power returned to the Ark, and this is why we are fighting them again. But this time, there seems to be a more evil presence controlling them all. Once we defeat all the bosses again, the final celestial spirit references the man from the Moon Tribe with the golden hair and how he helped us during the Orochi fight that took place within the celestial plane, saying that the celestials are grateful for him. She is obviously referring to Waka, revealing that he is actually a member of the Moon Tribe and has something to do with all this stuff that's going wrong, something that Isun actually accused him of multiple times during their bickering. From here, we can proceed onward to the final boss. The final boss battle of this game is great, in my opinion. When we enter the arena, we first see Waka trying to fight him in the darkness. Waka explains that the creature shrouded in darkness is Yami, the ruler of darkness, or the Dark Lord. Not him, that others have been mentioning. Yami is the one who killed all the celestials on the Ark years ago, and is the one who brought all the monsters to the mortal plane. When Yami is awakened, he steals all your celestial brush techniques and powers, leaving Ami powerless again. Yami reveals its true form as a little fish in a glass ball, and then goes to attack Ami, with Waka deciding to finally not be a dick and jump in front of Ami to protect her. While Waka is having his non-dick moment, he actually admits to being the one who brought the Ark to the Celestials in the first place, and put this whole thing in motion, now trying to atone for his mistakes. Waka is hot though, so me and Ami forgive him. Waka then has a Finn from Adventure Time moment and gets fucking yeeted into the stratosphere. Ami wakes back up, howls, and the fight begins. Yami's fight starts with you having absolutely no weapons or powers. Hitting Yami a few times will eventually result in you gaining access to your powers once again, one by one, with each pattern and attack often requiring the use of a brush technique you have regained. The fight is nothing short of epic, with the swelling music, the atmosphere, the gradual return of all your powers, the difficulty in the boss, the multiple phases, when Yami turns into a giant Dr. Eggman style robot, everything. But what I really like about this fight is near the end of it. When Yami takes his master hand from Smash Bros form, Ami is basically on her last legs. It seems like all hope is gone when Isun starts speaking. At this point, we hear dialogue from multiple characters we have met throughout our journey, all talking about Ami and her impact on the world and them as well. All of them begin praying to her to make the sun shine once more. While all of this is happening, the song Reset, which is my favorite song in the game, plays softly in the background. It fills me with such emotion and nostalgia. It's such a sad yet hopeful song, and evokes such feelings within me every time I hear it. As it turns out, Isun has finally become a celestial envoy, and has painted Amaterasu and provided everyone with the message of her, so they may believe in her and give her strength. Even his grandfather is proud of him again. Isun calls out to Amy, telling her to find her strength and pull through, while he rallies everyone to join together and pray and show love to Amy. All these prayers and all these words bring back the celestial powers to Amy, regaining her strength. She makes the sun rise and fully embraces and embodies Okami Amaterasu. With our newfound powers, one last time, we kick Yami's ass, ridding Nippon of evil. With Yami defeated, Amy wags her tail and Waka appears in his spaceship. He congratulates Amy and they soar off to the celestial plane. When it comes to post-game, you actually unlock a new game plus mode and have the ability to play the game over again with all your weapons and upgraded stats, besides the solar flare weapon. When you complete the game, you get a results screen that shows different unlockables and the criteria. On the playthrough you're seeing right now, I got an unlockable for not dying once, defeating a lot of enemies, gathering a lot of yen, and gathering a lot of demon fangs. The only one I didn't achieve was the total number of praise points. These achievements will carry on to your new game plus mode as well, and they allow you to change the appearance of Amy, or make her a completely different dog breed. It's actually adorable and I love it. You also unlock multiple pieces of concept art, in-game art, and full soundtracks, and many more extras. All of these art pieces can actually be found in the Okami art book, which I actually have a copy of in real life as well. All the art made for this game is absolutely stunning, and being able to access it both in-game and in an art book is wonderful. Though I will say finding physical copies of this art book can be a bit difficult nowadays, but there are online copies of it as well if you ever wanted to check it out. The art and specific style of art in this game is so heavily focused on, and one of the reasons of that is most likely because a huge theme in this game is the art itself. Thin Reaper, I think, put this into words best in his in-depth Okami review, where he said that the main theme presented in this game is the preservation of stories through art. Throughout the game, one of the main plot threads we follow is Isun's plot of becoming a celestial envoy and developing his art skills to, in the end, become a missionary for Amy. He does this by creating artwork of her and spreading her story around to everyone to make them believe. And as it turns out, the parts in this game told by narration and paintings done in the traditional Japanese watercolor style are actually being told to the player by Isun. The entire game is presented to us in this specific style because it is all Isun telling the story of Amaterasu through art. Telling stories through art is something that I, as an artist myself, have always wanted to do and strive to do within my day-to-day artwork, no matter how big or small the story I have to tell in the art pieces is. Art is something that has shaped my life and has been a defining factor of who I am and who I have always been. This story and theme from Okami really resonates with me, I think, because of how much art as a whole resonates with me as well. The ability to take your paintbrush, your pencil, your pens, or whatever you want to use and create something with such a deep and rich meaning and story to it, no matter what it is you are creating, is such a beautiful thing. And Okami really captures this feeling. As you traverse through the world, you are improving and impacting the world with your art. Every cursed and polluted land is brought back to life with the strokes of your paintbrush, and evil is conquered by the same strokes as well. Art is, at its core, something magical. It brings life to the world. It tells stories. It makes people feel things. It brings us together. And it makes our lives fantastical. Whether you create art or you are just a consumer and admirer of it, art will always impact our world. And at times like this, with the rise of generative AI art that has no emotion, no reason, and no life to it, we need to be reminded of how art and artists make positive changes in our lives more than ever. And I think Okami is such a great example of reminding us of this. Clover Studios clearly put a lot of time, effort, energy, and life into this game. And I also think that including the art pieces and the extras, and also releasing the art as a book, are just more things pointing to these messages presented in the game of preserving the stories, preserving art, and appreciating it. In the end, Okami is my William Afton of video games. In in the sense that it will always come back and I will always play it again and again and never tire of it. This game does and will always hold a very special place in my heart for its story, its characters, its gameplay, and themes. There is a part of me that has always wanted a sequel. And no, Okami Den isn't really a sequel. But honestly, the more I play this game and understand the message and themes they are getting across here, the more I am okay with not getting a sequel. There hasn't really been a game that I've come across like Okami, and I think its concept and messages are so impactful and unique, and I don't think there ever will be a game quite like Okami again. It's honestly a shame that the game got such mid-reception upon its release and over the years, but I am glad that it seems to be gathering a good cult following as the years go on, because it deserves all that and more. So the too long didn't watch of all this is, go play Okami. It's a fantastic game that will wow you beginning to end, and hopefully you will be able to gather at least a bit of a deeper appreciation for it like I have over my life and time playing it. Thanks so much for sticking around with me to the end and listening to this extremely long video. I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell, do all those silly little things to help support my channel, as this video took me a very long time to make, so I would greatly appreciate it. I do hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!